Hey y'all, it's mid-July and we're doing a garden tour today. Right now things are coming in really hot. It's a very special garden because this is mine and my husband Dylan's, our first garden that we built and designed on our own land. So I thought it'd be very special for you to all see what's going on in the garden so far this summer. Come along. Okay, so all along here with these trellises, these are all of our indeterminate tomato plants. Gosh, I think I have at least a dozen different varieties, Dylan. We have Romas. We have more back there, but we're going to come up this way through the garden. So we have Romas here. Further up here, we have our San Marzano. Trellised them all the same way through this kind of teepee variation. And as you can see, things are very, very bushy. Dylan's favorite is tomatoes, so that's why I have about, I think, 50 tomato plants, Dylan, in the garden this year. So I like to call this Italian row or Little Italy because I do the San Marzanos and the Romas. And if you look in between, let's see if I can find some. Aha, come over here, Dill. Wow, I really have to prune some more. We have some basil. So I like to co-plant basil with the tomatoes. They say that basil helps repel some pests. So basil, tomatoes, again, our Little Italy. And if we come around here, we get a better look at our tomato alley. So again, we have some basil. So again, that first row, San Marzanos, Romas, the perfect plum tomatoes, the perfect sauce tomatoes, very sweet, very meaty. And then the second row here, Dylan's favorites, we have our beefsteaks, our better boys, that you slice nicely and put on a BLT, right, Dill?
Oh yeah.
And then the further you go down, we have some Cherokee Purples. We also have Gladiators and mortgage lifters, which are newer for us to try. Again, very good sauce tomatoes. They say the Gladiators can get to be about 8 ounces or so in size. I also have a different type of basil. This is a Limoncello basil. Gosh, it smells so good. Have you smelled it, Dylan?
No.
You want to? You just gotta rub your finger on it, smell it. This is our third and fourth row of tomatoes. So we have more mortgage lifters, more Gladiators down here. I planted way too many. It's not really a problem, but it is a problem.
I'll eat them all.
And then this last row is all of our cherry and grape tomatoes. So this variety is a grape tomato. You can see everything's coming in really nicely. Here we have our Sungolds, we have our standard cherries, very sweet, again, Dylan's favorite. Some of these are, getting to be almost as tall as me. And then over here, we have our peppers. I didn't do too many peppers this year. I really wanted to focus on the tomatoes, I guess, as I usually do.
Oh, shoot, you got some coming in.
Yeah, we have a little green bell pepper. This plant's not doing too good. And then we have some banana peppers, Dill. Probably too many. And we have some jalapeños. We have some jalapeños and we have some hot fish. I love the hot fish. They are a little too hot for us, but the variegation on the leaves I think are just so pretty. With the white, this one doesn't have too much this year, but
we'll get there.
I think it's really pretty. The beds are more of an experimental. To be an herb and asparagus bed. We have some oregano that's perennial. We have some dill that's perennial. Rosemary, it can be perennial. Sometimes it lasts in the winter in our zone 6B. We're in southern New England, and sometimes it doesn't last too well, so I've been taking it inside and bringing it outside in the summer. This is what our asparagus looks like once it bolts, once it goes into a fern. Hopefully in a couple of years, this very asparagus will be ready for us to harvest. It grows up just like pencils right out of the ground, but they can take 3 or 4 years to mature until you can actually harvest them. So we haven't gotten there just yet. Here's our strawberry bed. We got a few strawberries. The birds also got a few strawberries. So this is also a work in progress. Behind the strawberries, we have some corn. Here we have our beans. So we have our pole beans right here. As you can see them growing nicely up this pole. And then we have 2 bush beans. I've already gotten a few beans out of them so far. The thing I learned about the beans is that I started them indoors a little too soon. They grew very fast, much faster than I thought. And I couldn't plant them outside because it was still not appropriate, or the weather wasn't as good enough for them, or it wasn't warm enough. So I think they got a little stunted, but they came back quite nicely. Whenever you see the little vines or the little tendrils, I just like to wrap them around so they know where to grow. And then you can see they have flowers. So hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be getting some nice green beans, right, Dill?
Hopefully.
And guess what?
More tomatoes.
More tomatoes. These varieties of tomatoes actually came from a very dear friend, so they're also experimental. I believe these are green Tebra. We have green Tebra, we have Hillbilly, we have orange plums, we have mangoes. I think those were the 4 I planted from a very good friend of mine. So this will be our first year trying out those tomatoes. And just like the other tomatoes that we've been growing, they are indeterminate, so you have to stake them and trellis them to keep them under control. Sucker. Smells good though. Okay. So now we're really getting into the thick of it. We're doing different varieties of squash. We have spaghetti squash, acorn squash, and butternut squash. So this bed right here is where I had my garlic. For 6B, I planted my garlic bulbs, I think it was early December last year. And then they came in throughout the spring and early summer, and I harvested them a week or 2 ago. So as I harvest them, I train my squash plants to just take over the areas that we are no longer going to use, or that we just harvested from, because as you can see, the squash is really taking off. I think I underestimated how much the squash would take over the garden per usual. So the variety I have here, Dylan, if you come close, is a spaghetti squash. And I planted 2 plants per each variety. So I have 2 spaghetti squash plants, 2 butternut squash, and 2 acorn squash. Ooh, and also 2 sugar pumpkins, because another Dylan's favorite is fresh pumpkin pie. And here is our cucumber trellis. So we've done this trellis in the past before, and it's really worked for us. As you can see, it's working just fine again. We have 3 different cucumber varieties. We have pickling, Marketmore, and then the classic, I think, 8 inchers. And we've harvested from each of them so far already. A little slow to start this year. I'm not sure if it's because of the amount of rain, or if it's getting too much shade. But as you can see, I'm just training the vines to go up the trellis so it can grow vertically. All right, so here we have 3 different zucchinis. 2 of them are an early hybrid, so we already started to harvest the zucchini a few weeks ago. And then I have 1 plant that's just a traditional zucchini plant that we have yet to harvest from. But if you look close, you can see he's right there. Zucchini there, all the blossoms. What's interesting with the zucchini is I noticed there's a natural variegation in the leaves. I was worried that it was powdery mildew at first, but luckily we have not been plagued by powdery mildew ever, and I don't think any of our gardens, Dylan. So again, the white on the leaf is just a variegation. It's not powdery mildew. Where the heck do I go now? Ah, look, here's a little butternut squash. Isn't he so cute? The butternut squash, you mix it with a little bit of maple syrup, a little bit of brown sugar, maybe even a little bit of cinnamon. So good. So here, we haven't had the best luck with broccoli. So our garden, this garden that we started a little bit later than we wanted to in the season, because we had some changes we had to make to our landscape in our house. So that's why the garden went in late, the fence was built late. Ideally, I would have planted my broccoli back in March, because it's a brassica and it prefers cooler weather, cooler temperatures. Once the summer heat really comes around, they bolt and they go to seed. So as you can see, the worms, the caterpillars really enjoyed my broccoli. There is the one in the back is starting to grow a little floret because this side of the garden, so this side with the cucumbers, the broccoli, some of the squash is north facing. So it gets more shade compared to the south facing side. Here I have some celery. I have quite a few bundles. That's coming in nicely. Almost looks like parsley. Here I have my fennel that I should harvest fairly soon. If you look closely, oh, it looks like I missed some leaves. If you look closely, you can see that it's almost ready to harvest. I like to use fennel in soup stock because it's very flavorful. Alright. I spent earlier, weeding the onion bed over here. We have 3 onion types. We have the yellow onions, the Walla Wallas. We have the, I think the ruby reds. And then we have the classic like green onion or green scallion that's growing here. Right next door we have the potatoes. So this is another plant or another crop that will be ready to harvest soon. Right now you can see the leaves. It already flowered. There are flowers here. You can see the leaves are starting to kind of turn,
Jesus.
are starting to die back a little bit. So again, the plan is once the potatoes die back, the squash is going to kind of just take over this area, so we don't have to worry about the squash impacting the growth or the harvest of the potatoes. And we're pretty much back where we started, and guess what? More tomatoes. It wouldn't be Andrea and Dylan garden if we didn't have at least 75% of it tomatoes. So again, these are 2 different varieties from my dear friend. They are a Hillbilly. The Hillbilly, I believe, is like a yellow, red, orange striped, kind of like a beefsteak tomato, so we're looking forward to that. And then another orange plum type tomato. I think it's called mango plum. So those are the 2 varieties that we're growing at these for. I think it's 2 and 2 each. But that pretty much concludes the garden tour. If I haven't mentioned it yet, our garden is about 1,000 square feet. There's obviously different areas where we could plant more. I am planning on sowing more seeds into the garden, such as carrots, collards, cilantro, later in the season when it gets chillier, lettuce, radishes. But for now, this is our summer season, and we're looking forward to a really good harvest. We love to hear your feedback and your thoughts, anything that we should add or any other ideas, but right now we're super happy and super excited, and we're really looking forward to a great harvest to come, and we're so happy that you are following along.